You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. My name is Nick Beveridge here with Jeremy Dowell and Kitchen. How are you?
Nick, I'm doing so good. How's it going today?
Dude, it's going good. Monday morning, I'm feeling good. It's a little chilly this morning, but dude, we've got season 2, episode 17 with Anthony Walker.
Speaking of Anthony Walker, we have Anthony Walker on the podcast today. Anthony's super great. I really enjoyed talking to Anthony. He's a super sharp dude. Got a lot of really cool things going. His story is really interesting too. How he kind of pole vaulted the residential side and went directly into killing it in the commercial land. Really good stuff.
This guy, he just puts me to shame and everyone I know to shame. This guy's tearing it up over only 2 years into real estate investing. But the way he speaks, the way he knows his product, he's already been on like Ken McElroy podcast and all that stuff. The guy knows what he's doing. So just, if you're looking to make passive investments, just give him your money.
He really embarrasses you, by the way.
No,
you should be embarrassed.
Doesn't embarrass me. I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah.
No, this guy was great. What a pleasure to have him on. He was gave such great advice. We talked about what he did, kind of built the foundation to have his kind of work ethic, and then just the ins and outs of multifamily long-term holds. Without further ado, I want everybody to peel their banana, start eating. Let's go. All right, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm here with Jeremy Kitchen and Anthony Walker. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Can't complain.
Yeah. How about you, Jeremy?
I'm doing so good. Refreshed from a nice little weekend, ready to kick back at it. So, Anthony, thanks so much for being here. We definitely appreciate it. Now, just a quick little pretense here. I actually met Anthony when I was doing real estate photography. He was an agent at the time, and I think we've both definitely upscaled our careers since then. Anthony, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so my name's Anthony Walker. I'm the Chief Investment Officer and a part owner in Cornerstone Commercial Investments. I've got 2 other business partners, and we currently just raise capital, private equity, and typically build apartments in the Northwest. So we're doing it in Montana, Idaho, and in Oregon, and also purchase apartments, kind of more of the value add scheme type idea.
That's awesome. Did you ever start in residential with your investing, or did you just go straight to commercial?
Great question. So I actually, when I first got into real estate, I pretty much just quit my job. I had, $20,000 saved up, and I was like, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to wholesale. I'm going to do, BRRRR kind of method. Everyone knows what BRRRR is, or, anything that was residential. It was buy, fix a home, flip a home, whatever it could be. And then I learned what real estate agents did, and so I thought that was a good way to make money. So I sold a lot of residential real estate, and during the time I met my now business partner, John, and he was kind of already dabbling in the syndication. They had done one, and I was like, man, this is exactly what I want to do. And I'm telling you, when I have not actually, to answer your question, I have not sold or flipped a single family home, but I have listened to thousands and thousands of hours of podcasts, read every book under the sun about investing in real estate and all about it. And so I was fortunate enough to skip it. And my first deal was actually just jumping right into syndication with my 2 business partners. So we did a 13 unit over in Redmond, Oregon, and that was my first deal.
That's awesome.
You know what's cool about that is so I'm a residential investor guy for now. A lot of the people in my sphere are residential people, but it seems like eventually they all graduate one day to start focus more just on multifamily. So I think it's pretty awesome that we get to speak to someone who just skipped residential altogether. Just makes a lot of sense, I'm sure. But can you give us a little bit more of a background preference on like what did you do before real estate and what got you into it?
Totally, yeah. So I was probably a senior in high school, and I had zero idea what I wanted to do. So I took the ASVAB, was thinking about going to the Air Force, and eventually, like 2 weeks before I graduated, I was like, well, I got into University of Idaho, so I might as well go to school if I want to. So I always wanted to start a business. Like, I don't know, it's been ingrained on me since I was younger. I sold popcorn. I flipped cars while I was in high school. And so I got into got into college and I was like, well, I want to study business because if I want to start a business, got to study business and paying for it myself. So I actually still flipped cars and I paid for my whole college just flipping cars. And I got a D on my first test in college. Had no idea what I was going to do. Thought I could, take the same mindset from high school and do well in college. And did terrible my first semester. And so I was like, well, if I'm paying for this, I got to put my all into it. And so I got a degree in finance and marketing. Ended up graduating cum laude. Did well in college, but during that time, it was just going to the gym, constantly listening to Bigger Pockets podcast, reading books. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad freshman year, and that's kind of what got me obsessed with the idea of financial freedom, and that became the ultimate goal. But also, I was doing internships at different tech companies, and at the time when I graduated, I thought I'd start a tech company, take the money, invest in real estate, kind of like I'm doing now, but do it passively and just, but have a massive tech company. So I moved to Missoula, got a job at a tech company, and it was the most boring thing I've ever done. I was sitting there 40 hours a week and getting everything done in 20 hours and listening to podcasts more. And I was going home reading books about real estate. And I said, one day, 6 months actually into my first real job out of college, I just went home to my girlfriend and said, "Hey, I'm quitting. Let's move back to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. That's where we both wanted to live." And so we pretty much just broke our lease and moved back and rented a bedroom for like $350 a month in a two-bedroom house downtown Coeur d'Alene. There's three of us living in 800 square feet. It's tiny, but rent was 300 bucks, $350 a month, and sat there for those 3 months and just decided what I wanted to do. I was gonna do wholesaling, like I mentioned, and do like residential flips and just try to get into like the whole Burr method. I had $20,000, and during that time, I actually met a guy, and he lives in Post Falls, and he had never made more than 70K a year, but was making $1.2 million a year in retirement because he just bought single family residential at property tax auctions. And then he would not rent them, but he would, resell them at a 10% note to people. And he had 223 single family homes that he bought for just dirt cheap. He bought them all in like New Mexico, Arizona. And I thought that was super intriguing. But then I thought, at the same time, he was missing out on the most important part, I thought, in real estate, which is appreciation. Cash flow is important, but long-term wealth, you have appreciation. So if you're just buying and selling houses, you're never going to get that long-term appreciation. And so I learned what real estate agents did at that time. I had zero idea. My parents have lived in the same house since I was 2 years old. So I had never experienced a real estate agent at that time, but I was good at sales. And so I got my real estate license and just went to town on that. So I did that for and I did that for about 3 years. But the first year that was all I was focused on, made good money, got rookie of the year Coldwell Banker, and got like in the top 5 or 10% Coldwell Banker Global. And at the time I was 22, just turning 23. Did well, partnered with my now business partner John. We formed the In the Northwest real estate team. We sold just under 100 million in residential in about 2.5 years. We used all that money, still lived very, very cheaply. I actually moved to another apartment that I was paying $250 a month at. And so the first 3 years I was just bootstrapping and taking all that cash. It's a good amount of money, but just putting it all into Cornerstone and my own personal investments to build up my cash flow. And then yeah, about May of last year, we just went full time into Cornerstone. At that time, we'd probably raised about 20 million, and we doubled our business last year and continue. We're going to try to double it this year as well. So
Okay. So, Anthony, holy crap. Slow down for a second. I think you lost a lot of people when you said that you were in high school flipping cars. Because I remember high school. I think Jeremy remembers too. Like kids our age were not flipping cars that we knew of.
No intention of making money than other at my Arby's job. That was all I wanted to
yeah.
make money at, right? My $6 an hour was very perfect for me at that time.
I mean, the hustlers out there were working at KFC and they were like flipping video games. what what was it? Do you remember what at such a young age got you um inspired and able to take the risk to actually buy vehicles and flip them? Because most kids in high school are not doing that kind of stuff. So what started all this?
I'd say it all started. I was a Boy Scout and selling popcorn. Probably what really got me started in that. I was like, when you're 11 years old, there's only so many ways to make money. You can do chores and get some money from your parents. My parents were very, you have to work for your money. Like there's no way around this world besides working for your money. They're like, I'm not buying you your first car. I'm not paying for college. Not to say that they couldn't help me with it, but they said if you want to succeed in this life, you have to learn how to succeed. You can't rely on your family. So I was like 11 or 12. I would just go to a neighborhood and door knock all day long, sell popcorn. I think I sold like $4 or $5,000 in popcorn one year to get a bunch of gift cards, and then I'd go buy it on random things with like my Scout account and stuff. So that I think that's where I got over that, like that fear of talking to people, and just the sales. I was not scared to go knock on people's doors or sit in front of Super One. Maybe I hated it, but I also just was disciplined enough to sit through it because I liked the reward at the end. And that pigtailed into yeah, my first car. My dad's not a mechanic, but he knows mechanics. He would think, play around with cars and stuff like that. And so I bought my first car for like $250 and put a new engine in it, and it was good. And then I realized, wow, this thing's worth like 3 grand. And so actually, my first car, a tree fell on it, and then I got paid out. And then I was like, man, I'm gonna continue doing this. So I just did it again with another Jeep, and then did it with just continue to snowball it. I'd double my money pretty much every time I'd buy and put a new engine in or put a transmission in or even just clean up the body work on it. And I just learned a lot of it from my dad taught me, but I'd watch YouTube videos. Like if I didn't know how to do something, you can learn anything in this world on YouTube. I'm pretty confident you could become like a surgeon if you wanted to, just watching YouTube videos. It's just crazy.
YouTube University. Yep, that's what we were raised on for sure.
Yeah. So back when you're is what 10, 11, 12, your parents just basically said, "Hey, if you want any money for anything, go get it yourself." Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I was never paid chore money. So even if I said, chore money, like my parents were like, you're going to do the dishes. And I didn't get anything in return. It was just part of like, hey, you're grateful to live here type idea. And it's just there. And I'm grateful for it now. That at the time, maybe I was not happy about it, but now, I couldn't be more grateful because they put that ethic in me and kind of the entrepreneurial spirit. My dad was always a person who probably wanted to start a business, never did, but always told me like, if you ever want to be successful, if you want like true wealth or true, freedom, start your own business. And I think, that's just been ingrained on me my whole life, and I took it to heart.
That's awesome. I think your parents are pretty smart, and I hope one day I can stop spoiling my kids. I mean, they're still pretty young. They're like 4 and 6 years old, but maybe that's a good cutoff. Like as soon as Aubrey hits 10, I'm like, okay, you're on your own.
Figure it out, dude. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they provided everything, they food, water, great, like they pushed me to do things, but it was like even when I played lacrosse, they're like, hey, you want a new lacrosse stick, instead of just going and buying me a $500 lacrosse stick type idea. They're like, at least split it with them, figure out how to pay for part of it type idea, and it's just that work ethic that's brought me to where I am. I really do believe that.
So, what was it like when you were flipping cars, by the way, when you were like 11, 12? Like, how did you go about finding cars? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but how does a 12-year-old go and find cars to buy?
Great. Well, I wasn't 12 when I first flipped my first car. That was popcorn, but I probably flipped my first car when I was probably bought my first car when I was 15. And well, high school, I don't know. I guess I should say I didn't really try in high school. I would just go and, cheat off the person next to me and do fine. Like I'm good at it, but it was almost easy. Like I've always been a person that like I was in Title One reading because I refused to read type person. Like I was always just wanting to do more. So I'd sit in class on my phone and look at Craigslist all day instead of pay attention in math class or English. And I'd find a good deal, and my buddy Tanner and I would go look at it after school. And it was a lot more fun than listening to the teacher blabber on about grammar.
Nice.
Yeah. I just think it's so awesome that you had all these experiences when you're really young because when you hear like when you first made your intro, if you didn't say anything about high school or anything like that, what people hear is, oh, you heard some podcasts, you got inspired, and then you just started killing it. But that's just not the truth, and a lot of people are not in a position where they have that kind of ethic, that work ethic that you do. Um, and so I just want to point that out. Like you've laid this, you've spent what, a decade of from 10 to 20, just laying this solid foundation of hustling and working really hard. And it's no wonder you're successful now. It's
Most people look at like my success because I graduated high or college. It's really only been 3 years. I'm 25, and I graduated college obviously when I was 22. So it's been everyone looks at it as 3 years, but it's like, man, I've been hustling since I was 15 years old. The last 10 years type idea, flipping cars. Working my way through college, and all of that's led up to what it is today. Most people really do overlook that, and but it's been a decade of hard work when I think about it now. When you put it that way, and it's I can't wait for what the future holds either. So
yeah. So what are your thoughts on college these days? Is it something you recommend people go to if they do want to own a business someday?
Not at all. Honestly, I can't say I got a degree in finance and I got a degree in marketing. I remember one time I was sitting in marketing class learning off of a cereal box what this advertisement meant. I can firmly tell you that marketing, at least my marketing, I'm not saying every college is the same, but I just think that like the School of Hard Knocks and YouTube and just jumping into things, you learn so much more. And even finance, I would say I learned a good amount about finance. They don't teach real estate investing at all. I'm learning derivatives, stocks, bonds, all that stuff. It's great to understand numbers, but really, you could do all of it in 2 years. The first 2 years of college is basically relearning high school, and then the next 2 years is, a little bit tougher courses and classes, but really I don't recommend it at all. I don't have any kids yet, and I will someday, I would probably offer them, if they were looking at going to college, I'd probably offer them, hey, I'll give you a $50,000 loan and I want you to start a business. And whatever it is, lawn care, I don't care what they do. I think that would be such a better lesson. They learn how to bookkeep, they learn how to do all these things of running a business. And if it completely fails, I'd probably still try to get them to pay me back because I think that's also one insanely important lesson is if you owe someone money, like you figure out a way to get them paid back. But I just think that those lessons would teach you far more, as they've taught me far more. I've failed many times. I've lost plenty of money, and those lessons are far greater than anything I learned in college.
Sure.
No, I've got to agree with you on that. No, so my wife is a she got a degree in business finance, and a $50,000 debt bill, but and I hope she's not listening to this, but she doesn't know jack shit about business or finance. And she's honest about it too. It's just that was what she majored in. That was her degree, but it means nothing these days when it comes to actually managing your finances and running a business.
I think we're at the forefront of a massive change in education. I'm praying for it, and I really think that the next decade, and ideally by the time my kids are in college or wanting to go to college, it's just going to be a completely different landscape. With online education, with all these different things, I really think we're in, even public education. I think K through 12 has massive changes coming to it as well. I think all of it is going to shift over the next 10 years because people are starting to understand where it's become. It's just a profit machine. They're running it like a business, and people going through these are just another dollar sign, and they're not there for their education. So I think it's going to be a massive change, which I'm excited for. I want to be an advocate for that. It's one of the biggest things I'm passionate about is changing education, mainly K through 12. I think that needs a massive change to it as well.
Yeah, totally. It's just slow. And one thing about that, so my wife doesn't not know shit now. I mean, us running our real estate sales business and having rentals and stuff, she's learned everything just from what we've done, but it was all post college, which I gotta agree with you. I think it's just such a waste of time and money. And people just gotta hustle until they find something they like and then jump in, just like you said.
Totally agree.
You don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? Like I've been in this game for just about 2 years, and I've learned more in the last 2 years than I learned my entire adult life. It's been fascinating, like the amount of knowledge there is out there, and the K through 12 schools, they want to build employees, they want to build people who can work for their companies, basically, and that's not exactly what the entrepreneurial mindset is all about.
Yeah, there's always going to be that aspect. There needs to be employees, but I think there's a shift that needs to happen. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur either. So.
Right, exactly. There's systems for a lot of people that do a lot of different things. So I do want to kind of talk about raising capital with you, Anthony. You've raised a lot of capital. Can you tell us what that process has been like for you?
Yeah, great question. So, a lot of it has been through time. John and my two business partners kind of started Cornerstone. They raised a little bit of money, and then I joined as the third partner. And it's really just this snowball effect. So, to date, actually until last week, I should say, it was completely through referrals, cold calling, meeting people for coffees, and just getting our name out there. We hadn't spent a penny on advertising until last week. We launched a big campaign because we're at the point where we put our processes. So, the last 3 years have really been building processes, building things that are repeatable, that are easy for investors, and then just impressing people. So far, the $40 million, just over $40 million we've raised has been from we get an investor, he loves us enough, we have such a good process, they trust us, we've given them good returns, they tell a few of their friends, and every single person's a little, tree type idea. And that's been great. It's been through a lot of hard work, a lot of coffees, a lot of meetings, a lot of reaching out to people. We also have a gentleman over in Montana who just knows everyone in Montana. He used to be an athletics director there, and he's been a great resource to us, and we pay him for that as well. And so that's how it's grown so far, which has been great because it's a really personal relationship with every single one of our investors. I've probably talked to, I can say I've talked to every single one of our investors on the phone. That's kind of my role is the raising capital. And I've had conversations, I've helped them fill out docs, but all of that is just like refining the process. And now we're at the point where we hired a marketing company. We're doing significant ad spend now to try to get to that next level, kind of like a lot of them do. We want to raise another 40 million this year to double it. And so we're just getting to that point, but it's just been repetition after repetition of refining our process, because that's the most important thing is as any business, I think, is the customer journey is your most important marketing in the world. So
And what kind of returns are you giving your investors, by the way?
yeah, so most of our first project ever, I should say, was Lolo, a 34 unit over in Montana. And we finished that one it was a development raised capital in 19, finished in spring of 2020, right as COVID was hitting. So it was perfect. We're scared to even get at least because COVID was hitting, but now we all know what COVID did to our area. So that one we've given investors, like in 2022, we gave them a 15% cash on cash return, which was a perfect storm. We built for cheaper before costs had gone up, and the rents have just gone drastically up over the last 2 years. But historically, most of our projects are hitting that, day one, 7 to 9% cash on cash return, 24 to 27% IRR. And then, equity multiples over 7 to 10 years will, 2 to 3 times your money is kind of our targeted goals. But I always preface it with investors is we are long-term, investors. We're not going to develop something and sell it in 3 years. We want to hold it for 7, 10 years. And if it's still cash flowing, we have nothing better to buy. If we sell it, we're going to hold it for 20 years. We're in this for the long range. We'd rather refinance, pull out tax-free income. Our number one goal for our investors is to be an equity shield for them so we can ride out volatility. And then number two is to provide as much tax-free wealth to our investors as possible.
Awesome. So what it sounds like is like you're the Ken McElroy of North Idaho. Does that sound right?
Exactly right. We were on Ken McElroy's podcast, and we've taken a lot of advice for Ken McElroy.
Oh, really?
And he is I met him, yeah, last almost a year ago now. We flew down there and we're on his podcast, and he is just a wonderful man. And we didn't even know it at the time, but we are running our business just like Ken McElroy. And now I understand why, because one of my business partners, has been following Ken McElroy for his whole life type idea. And we started with a 90-10 split. We're at an 85-15 split now, and when we have a big enough brand, we'll probably do exactly what Ken has done. But yeah, you're right. He's given us a lot of advice on our business, and it's he runs a phenomenal business himself. So why not take advice from them? We're One of our biggest philosophies is we don't need to recreate the wheel. We can take the wheel and make it better.
That's funny. I actually had no idea that you knew Ken or was on his podcast or anything. You just sound a lot like Ken McElroy in the way he runs his business.
Get on the internet, Nick. Jeez, I've seen it before.
Yeah, it's kind of our business. If you mashed Ken McElroy's business and Brandon Turner's business, that's Cornerstone. Like those are my two people that we look at and we're inspired by, and we want to create our own business because we're very very different than both of them. I should say we know none of the markets are the same. None of how we run our day to day operations are like exactly the same type idea, but. A lot of the concepts, the marketing we take from Brandon, how we run our operations is kind of from Ken, and then we form our own model, and it's gotten us a lot of success. I consume a lot of content from successful people doing where I want to be. Ideally we want to go past them. We follow the Wolf Company in Spokane. We want to get past them someday, but for now it's I'm young, and a lot of that experience is there for the taking. So why not take it?
Yeah. So just to recap a little bit, so what you're doing is you're buying larger multifamily deals, you're raising capital, you're making improvements, and you're holding long term. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and developing. So we do a lot of ground up development as well.
Oh, okay. All right. So new construction development.
That's our bread and butter. It's new construction.
For anyone who's never done any of this before, what would you say is the surprisingly easiest part of your job, and what would be the surprisingly like hardest part of this business for you?
Great question. I think that raising capital is easier than you think. I'm not saying it's difficult, but if you have a good investment, you can provide a pro forma that are going to return well, and you provide it to someone who has money that wants to invest. it's really not that hard to convince them as long as you know they trust you and the deal makes sense. Really, I mean, they want to get a return just as bad as you do, and if they have to do no work for that return, it's really not as hard as you want. There's a lot of fear around it, and you know you have to build it. It does take time, but it's not as hard as you would possibly think it would be. The hardest part has been, I'd say, two parts. You know, lately it's been really hard in the last couple of years to find really good talent on our team, and unfortunately we have. But there's been so many people hiring and stuff in our areas that it's hard to find that really good talent. Number two would be, you know, on the development side is finding a builder that is honest. You know, a lot of people, we had a developer or builder a couple of years ago who kind of screwed us, and now we have a great builder, but it's taken time to find the perfect match, and a lot of people will overpromise and underdeliver. And we just don't like that at all. We underpromise, overdeliver on everything, and we don't have the same energy, then it just doesn't work for us.
Man, I have no experience of that at all with builders.
Exactly.
You're a liar.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, are you currently hiring?
We're going to be this year. We're going to be hiring probably two, maybe three roles this year. We're kind of figuring out, actually, we were just talking before this, figuring out what exact role it's going to be first. But as I mentioned, we just did this marketing company and we're getting a lot of leads and stuff. And as long as that kind of pans out like we're planning it to raise the capital, then we want to hire some business development roles, and we want to hire an acquisitions role, and we want to hire someone else on our marketing team that kind of oversees a lot of the back end of it.
Awesome. Okay, so for the 14 people out there that might be listening to this someday, what roles specifically do you think you might be willing to hire this year? If that person might be interested.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be business development will be number one. We have someone on our team, Sarah, who's doing kind of two roles right now. That's why we set it up, and she's getting overwhelmed. So now we split that into two roles, so then she can focus on client success, and then we're going to hire business development on the back end. Um, and then one of the big roles we're trying to figure out how to structure right now is an incentive role for an acquisitions manager, someone who's just constantly looking for more land to develop on, new value add deals, is underwriting deals, and really understands the process. Our biggest thing right now, though, is hiring people that know how to do that already, and it's going to be a lucrative position. We'll probably have a base, but it's going to be incentivized on acquiring deals. So similar like a real estate agent type idea. We want someone who knows how to buy and sell real estate, but is doing it full time for us and can bring us deals, and then we'll incentivize them when we close on deals.
Nice. Speaking of deals, real quick, what kind of deals are you going after? Like, I know with commercial, it's a lot different than residential. I only have a little bit of experience with residential, but obviously, you guys are looking for cap rates and stuff like that. So, what makes a deal for you, and how do you go about analyzing that in a commercial deal?
Great question. So I'll start with development because that's land and that's what we've done a lot of. We have 296 units under either construction or pre-development right now. And first, you look at the land. We won't play with anything right now that isn't zoned correctly. We don't want to risk our investors' money trying to get a zone change or annexation. And that's just the current state of things right now. The areas we're developing in are growing very quickly, but the locals don't like the growth, so it's been very difficult to get zone changes and whatnot. And we don't want to risk our investors' money on that. So first off, we're gonna look at the zoning's correct, and then we look at the price per door. So if you could build 100 units on it, and depending on location, we can probably pay. If it's on the outskirts, maybe 15,000 per door, and if it's an in town, infill location, you can pay more. Just if it's downtown Coeur d'Alene, you can pay even more than you can if it's in an infill location in Post Falls type idea. So look at that. And then we have a bunch of buildings already designed. We kind of know building costs because we're developing so much right now, but we'll look at it. We'll probably put it under contract, and then we'll work with our builder to kind of figure out costs. And I'm actually the one that'll build out the whole pro forma for it. We've got about a 30-page pro forma. It's massive. It kind of goes over every single metric you could possibly look at. And then we'll value engineer it. So once we get it, good to go, we'll value engineer as well to get it to those returns we want to see for our investors. One of the best things that we've done a lot on the development side, you can be really creative, and that's why we've liked the development side. You talk about creative finance or whatnot. A lot of these owners out there that own the land, they own it outright. They're a family, they've owned it for a while. And if they sell it, they've got the same issues if you sold real estate. They got to pay taxes on it, they have to exchange it into something else. And so a lot of times we're working with owners who just want to keep it in the deal. So, instead of selling, your land for $1 million, they can keep it in as equity. It'd be a non-taxable event. And now they can receive cash flow on that bare piece of land. They can make, if it's $1 million, they can make 70 to $90,000 a year from day one, or as soon as we're done with the project, in cash flow. So it's kind of a win-win situation. So we've been working with people on that. And then on the value add side, we have been looking for, big value add. So if we can buy it at a 5 cap, we can add value, get it up to like a 6.5, 7 cap. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's great for us. And we're doing that. We bought a 26 unit here in Coeur d'Alene, and we're completely renovating it. We got it for a good price, way under what it would cost to rebuild. We're going to put a significant amount into it, and then we're going to release it all up, and it's going to be, in that 6.5 cap range for our, maybe higher for our investors. And that's kind of our bread and butter right now. And as we scale, we want bigger projects. So, we'd love to find a 200 or 300 unit type idea project in our markets. It's just really hard to do with the competition that's here. There's a lot of institutional money coming to our markets, that are just buying it at cap rates where we couldn't even give investors a 1 or 2% cash flow, but they're happy with it because they're exchanging out of California or Seattle or Portland type idea.
Sure.
Okay, Anthony, sorry if I heard you wrong. Did you say that you might be able to develop for 15 grand a door in some rural areas?
No, no, no. Buy the land. Sorry, no, buy the land. Just the land cost if it's 15,000 a door.
Oh, okay. So that would be your land acquisition is 15 a door.
Yeah,
Are you building 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms? Like what does your average apartment look like that you build from the ground up?
yeah. We kind of have, I'd say, two different models. We have like your 12, 24 plex, 6 plus kind of walk up villa style apartments. We are very much, we like 2 bedroom, 2 baths. We don't really do any 2 1s. We very rarely, I'm not saying we won't, but we like the 2 bedroom, 2 baths. We like the 1 bedroom, 1 bath. We like the 3 2s. We don't do a lot of studios. We don't do a lot of 2 1s. Our bread and butter, typically over 50%, will include 2 2s because they don't cost much more to build than a 1 bedroom, 1 bath or a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, but they carry a lot more in rent and rubs, which is, kind of utility billing. So we do a lot of that. We do the 3 story walk up. As I mentioned, we're a long term hold company. So our goal is to give tax free wealth over long term. So we'll put LVP throughout everywhere. We put quartz countertops, stainless appliances. If we can just spend another 5, 10,000 per unit, but get, even if it's the same rent and our returns aren't, as good as they potentially could be, maybe we're a half a point lower than we could be. When the market looks like it does today, when there's a lot more rents out there, when there's a lot more, flexibility, lower demand, our units stay rented because they're the same price, better finishes, and typically a better location because they're an infill location. You can walk out your door and go to a restaurant. That's our bread and butter. We love that. And then we have the 4 story kind of elevators. So right now we're building a project in Missoula that's 4 stories, has an elevator, has a gym in it, has, it's beautiful project, one big building. And that one again, kind of same type idea finishes, a little bit more to build, but again, it's just such a good location. And the elevator's nice because it costs more, but it also allows accessibility from anyone to any of those units. So if you had a ground floor unit in a villa, and you're disabled or something, well, you can only rent that ground floor unit. It's gonna be hard to get upstairs. Whereas the elevator makes it accessible, and it's only a couple hundred grand more. And we're doing that same type of thing. We're doing a project up in Sandpoint that's going to be two 67 unit, 4 story elevator service buildings. And it's a great location. So we're excited for that.
So Anthony, it's the start of 2023 and 2022, I'm sure you're aware, was a weird year.
Yeah.
Not very consistent. Um, Rents seemed like they were all over the place. Rates were all over the place. Tell us, what did you see happen with rents in 2022? Did they go up? Did they go down? Did they stay the same? Um, what did you see happen, and what do you think might happen this year?
Preface it with 20 and 2021, rents went up at a ridiculous level in our markets. So Montana and Idaho rents went up, 18% or 16%. And then 2022, they kind of went up like this and they took a dip. Um, I would say, in the Coeur d'Alene area markets, rents went down 10% probably on most properties, like multifamily apartments, I should say. But again, they went up, they went up 18% the year before. So they're up, 8% over 2 years. That's great. All of our pro formas. We underwrite everything from the day we started. So like our Post Falls project is leasing up as we speak, but we underwrote those rents at in 2020 at when we kind of started that development. So they're still higher than our projections. So when, I should preface any development we do, we underwrite it at today's dollars and what we could get in rent, and it's conservative. We were also very conservative. If it was 21, we would have been even more conservative. And then we never try to guess the future. So we're not going to say, oh, by the time it's done, we're going to get these rents. We never do that. And we're happy we don't, because now we're still hitting all of our pro forma numbers for that exact reason. Even if rents do go down, we're conservative. So I think that rents will probably continue to go down. In a lot of the markets. Missoula is a great market. We like that because they have such a housing shortage there, even worse than they do in Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls. And so rents have, maybe gone down a little bit or stabilized there, but there's like 400 or 500 apartment units coming online over the next 4 or 5 months between Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. So I think just with the sheer supply, it's going to lower rents a little bit, but maybe 5-10%. But I do think, all the single family builders have slowed down. We're going to hit that. We're going to hit the shortage again here in the next, 18 months, maybe 2 years, when rates go back down, as they inevitably will. They always do. And there's going to be people wanting to move here, get out of California, get out of Seattle. And they're going to want to be here. I mean, we're running a Google advertisement right now, and we're getting more searches for Post Falls apartments than we are getting in Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Hayden combined. So more people are looking at apartments from Seattle than all the cities that already live here combined. So it's like there's still people who want to be in our markets, which that's why we're here. And so it's going to lead to a shortage. I do think that cap rates are going to go up in 2023, and there's going to be some volatility. Rents are probably going to go down a little bit, and you're going to lose some equity. But as long as you're not forced to sell and you hold it long term, you'll be just fine in anything. I do also think there's going to be massive opportunity this year with distressed properties. I think you're going to have a lot of people that got 75-25, which means they put 25% down a loan, or 30% down in a loan. They expected to be done with the project or value at it, and they had a bridge loan on it, or they only had like 2 or 3 year debt on it, and that's going to come due, and they're not going to have the equity. They thought they'd have the extra equity, but now cap rates have gone up, rents have gone down. They're still going to have 30% equity. But when they go to refinance it, the bank's going to say, hey, no, we want 40% equity now, so you got to come up with an extra 10%. Even though the project's performing, they're just banks are going to be more strict, a lot more strict. And so they're going to have to do capital calls, they're going to have to inject cash into it, or they're going to be forced to sell it and maybe break even, or worse, lose a little bit of money. I think there's going to be some massive opportunity around the debt that's coming due this year. And there's going to be just, we're doing projects, and the banks are already requiring 60-40 on most of our construction projects. So we're having to raise 40% equity. Actually, we're raising about 50% equity on all of our projects, because 40% for the bank and another 10% for partnership reserves, interest rate reserves, and just overall project reserves, contingency line items, so we can get through the development. And I think that I know that a lot of people didn't have that kind of, didn't raise that kind of capital, or didn't have that capital to begin with. And it's not just syndicators, it's not just other people, it's, family offices are going to deal with the same thing. It's going to be personal people that, put $5 million down in a $20 million development that need to come up with more money that can't. So I think it's going to breed massive opportunity if you're willing to take the risk and jump into it. It's going to be harder than ever to buy a property too. If you listen to Ken McElroy or Brandon Turner talk about 2008, and it was insanely hard to buy, but if it penciled and you bought in 2008, in 2015 it was the best investment you ever made type of deal. And I think it's the exact same opportunity we're going to see here.
Yeah. And I ran some analysts too, like back if you were to purchase in 2006, 2007, just before the market crashed, mostly on single family. And man, if you would have just held on, you'd be just fine. You actually wouldn't be just fine. You'd be doing really well.
Yep.
Something that you mentioned, you got into this Post Falls project in 2020. You projected rents at a certain amount, and rents were actually higher. But for the people that aren't in the game, if they had just so that they understand what actually happened the last couple of years, I'm sure you experienced some increased cost in your improvement costs and your debt service, right?
Yep.
Did the rents make up? Did the higher rents make up for that?
Yeah, they did, and also we are very conservative in all of our projections. So we're going to typically have I would say a 7 to 10% contingency for cost overruns or like that. So we have that in the pro forma from day one. And if we don't use that, great, we distribute it back to investors and we overperform. Great. If we do use it, okay, it's still going to perform as we expect it to. It's still going to hit the targets, which I would recommend anyone do. Just be insanely conservative in everything you do, especially if it's developing, because there are so many unknowns. You can run into environmental things you didn't know existed, even if you got a geotech type idea or got a phase one. There's just too many unknowns in development because you're building a brand new building. And you're right though, there was tons of cost overruns. I think that project was probably 8% over budget, but we still we had all the cash and we did well on it, and we're still going to continue to do well on it. Additionally, when we started that project, there's always goods and bad things about the market. It was easy to get a loan then. Banks wanted to lend. The Federal Reserve was printing money. They wanted banks to lend money. So we were able to fix our debt on a construction loan, which if a lot of you guys don't know is really hard to do. A lot of times construction debt's variable, so it fluctuates with the market. And we fixed that at like a 3.5% rate for like 3 years while we were doing the development. So it was just 3.5%, as you know, that debt's losing money because inflation was 9%. So it was just a win-win situation for us and our investors.
So like that project, you had that debt fixed for another year or so.
Yeah, was we started that. Yeah, exactly. Well, and then when you're done, they're going to ask you. So we also do. We don't do any bridge debt or any sort of bridge construction debt. So we aren't forced to refinance when we're done for that exact reason. We don't want to have to. If we were in the same scenario and we didn't have enough equity, all of our loans are convertible without a refinance. So whatever bank we choose, and that's just good banking relationships, we can convert that debt, that construction debt, into perm financing when it's leased and stabilized. But we don't. We actually refinance every single time. When we're done with construction, we have it stabilized. We're going to refinance into Fannie Mae non-recourse interest-only debt for fixed for 10 years.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's probably the one of the top top three most important things in any sort of real estate. If you can get good debt and you understand the financing of any project, you're gonna make a ton of money.
That's awesome. That's really good. I do want to kind of circle back real quick to your entrepreneurial mindset, Anthony. I know, like you said, you've been doing this a long time, but you've been in the investing game just a couple of years. In your opinion, what does it take for somebody to kind of be in your shoes and kind of fill the role you're filling as far as being an entrepreneur and staying on top of your mindset?
Yeah, great question. I think that the most important investment you'll ever make is into yourself. So reading books, going to, conventions, listening to podcasts, I have a good morning routine. I wake up early, I go to the gym, at the gym listen to a podcast for an hour. And I think that all of that has really led to, my mind being open to the possibilities out there and also thinking big, not just thinking, okay, I want to try to get a single family home, which is great, but you have to think past that. Like, hey, in 10 years, I want to have 100 single family homes. You have to have massive goals and then break them down. So I think that, invest in yourself, having these massive goals, and then really believing in yourself is, a massive part of it. You have to believe that you can achieve these things or you never will. And then as anything, if you want to be successful at it, you have to be passionate about it. Like I'm obsessed with investing in real estate. I'm obsessed with what I do every day. I wake up and I love doing it. And whether or not that's investing in real estate, it could be anything you do, but you won't find long-term success, in my belief, unless you're obsessed with it and like truly passionate about what you're doing. And I think that has to be beyond, any sort of monetary gains too, because as you get, more successful, monetary gains just, are they feel great in the moment, but then they go away. And so it has to be a longer term thing. And so once you can figure out what that is, there's really nothing that can stop you, in my opinion.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So what do you recommend that newer investors get their real estate license like you did?
I don't think, I think it depends on your goals. I think real estate licenses are great, but I don't think you necessarily need them. I used it as a way to make money to invest into what my true passion was, which is what I'm doing now. And I think it's a great way to make money. It's very difficult to do. Being a real estate agent is very difficult. But if you dive yourself into it and just like immerse yourself and understand sales, you can make great money. But I don't think, if you're wanting to get into Burr and your ultimate goal is to just have passive income to become financially free. I don't think you need it at all. I think you can continue, if you already have a good job, continue doing that and do this on the side, burr a few houses and start scaling on the side and continue crushing it at what they do. And we have a lot of investors who, have sold their portfolios and invested with us, or done different things, and then they get a focus on what they're good at, and they become far more successful at it. We have a football coach who has invested with us significantly, and he was buying fourplexes and duplexes and trying to get more passive income because he liked the idea of it. But now since then, he's just been investing with us and focusing full time on coaching. And now he's getting like NFL offers because he put all of his mind into the one thing that he's really truly good at. And I think that's same with getting a real estate license. It's like if you don't want to become a realtor, if you don't want to sell particularly, then it could just be something that leads you down a path that's not going to make you any closer to financial freedom.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of goals, because you did mention that, what are kind of your 5 year goals going forward? Like, what's your plan as far as continuing to build your Cornerstone investments up, and where do you guys see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, great question. We want to, in 5 years, we want to be at the, around $100 million a year in equity we want to be raising. And then we want to really dive into actually our personal branding. So one of my biggest passions beyond real estate is helping people. Like what Brandon Turner's done to the world, I just find so inspiring. I want to do something very similar, but my own kind of voice, my own opportunity. So in 5 years, we'd like to have a full-fledged, podcast going as well, YouTube channel, and no reason more than actually we'll most likely donate all of the funds from that as well to charity or whatever we choose. Probably a local charity. We really are. We love the local, Coeur d'Alene kind of charity type idea. We'll probably do localized charity. But just really growing our brand and changing people's lives. I mean, as much as my life has been changed by what Brandon Turner has done, I want to carry that on and change other people's lives. That's where a lot of my passion lies. So it's going to be scaling Cornerstone to 100 million a year, having a full team under us, probably removing a lot of my time out of it. Another thing that me and my business partner want to be able to do, and we're young, is travel a lot more. Spend time in South America while also running the company. So 5 years, I think a lot of my time will be replaced, and my full focus will be brand awareness and branding Cornerstone into the company that it can be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Anthony, what gave you the idea to name your company Cornerstone?
So actually, business was actually named before I joined it, but I love the name. We decided not to switch it because you can kind of see my logo here. This is around it. This is equity shield for our investors. That's a big thing we talk about. Is as you were talking about, Nick. If you bought in the top of '06, as long as you didn't sell it, you didn't lose money. So that's kind of ours. Is right now we're having volatile times and less demand. We'll be able to ride that out, and we'll be able to do way better on the end. So we have a great equity shield, and then Cornerstone. It's biblical as well as it is practical. So the Cornerstone is just such an important part of everyone's life. And so we had that, and then the commercial investments is just kind of a given part of it. But it's really about the Cornerstone. And we're all Christian here, and we believe in God, and so that's a big part of our business, and we believe God put us here to do these different things, and our investors trust in us for that reason as well.
It's the cornerstone of your business and faith. I love it. If anybody wanted to invest with you and Cornerstones, what are the criteria for that, and how would you recommend somebody get a hold of you to make that happen?
Great question. So we have our website, www.cornerstonecommercialinvestments.com, or you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn and reach out to me anytime, or just call me. And then if you want to invest with us, one of the criteria is you have to be an accredited investor. So we do what's called a 506 Schedule C. You have to be an accredited investor, which the IRS has a whole definition for that. But basically, you have to have either $1 million in net worth minus or not including your primary residence, or you have to make a certain amount, like 200 to 300,000 a year. And that's the SEC regulation. If we got to pick and choose, we wouldn't have that. But we have to, and they're very strict about it. And then we have minimum investments just to kind of, we don't want someone investing $5,000. So typically we have like a $50,000 to $100,000 minimum investment on our projects. Other than that, anyone can invest with us. We have plenty of local people that invest with us, and they love it. We keep it completely passive, so it's not for the syndication. In my type of investing is not for someone who's a professional real estate investor who flips their own homes and does all these things. You're always going to make a better return on your own. It's for the people that are crushing it at something. They sold a business. They're focusing on other things, and they want to get passive income because it is truly 100% passive. We take care of everything, asset management, everything.
So those who are still confused, give Anthony your money. You don't have to do anything,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So I'm curious. You are investing ground up multifamily, Montana, Idaho, Oregon area. But I'm really curious about Idaho since we live here. What if you had to guess, 20 years from now, what smaller city in North Idaho do you think will look completely different, um, 20 years from now than what it looks like today? If you had to guess.
Depends how smart you're talking. I think the two biggest changing cities are going to be Post Falls and Sandpoint. I think that Post Falls, that's where all the growth pretty much has to go for the Coeur d'Alene area. And Hayden is so anti-growth right now for I think a while, as they have been also for a while. It's going to push everything pretty much to Post Falls to grow. And then Sandpoint, Schweitzer is exploding. There's some phenomenal companies there. You have a massive tech company called Coachella there. You have Lighthouse Foods there. You have Kodiak Aircraft. Like better jobs there than a lot of other places in Idaho, especially North Idaho. And so I think that's going to push the growth there. And we're super bullish there. I mean, we're building our own development there, and there's a lot of people that want to live there. Now, I think the biggest constraint Sandpoint's going to have is labor. Trying to find people to build things there is incredibly difficult.
What do you think of some of the smaller cities in Sandpoint or around Sandpoint, like Ponderay, Kootenai? Do you think those areas will see big growth?
I do, yeah. I think both Ponderay and Kootenai. I think it's kind of like, you know, I preface it with like kind of like Post Falls. Coeur d'Alene is pretty much full, and there's only vertical growth. I think that's kind of Sandpoint as well. So I think that's going to push it a lot to Ponderay and Kootenai, as long as home prices are a little bit cheaper there, and it's going to push it more toward also like Dover type idea. I think Dover is going to grow. I love Dover. I mean, it's where I got engaged at actually, and it's a beautiful area there, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
Dover's where I first got into new construction. We built 5 houses there. We did really well. Um, very hard to build in though. A lot of regulations.
Yeah, a lot of regulations. They have a lot of zoning things there in Dover, but Sandpoint's just such a beautiful place. I just again I think the thing that's going to push it back is it's not super close to a big airport like Coeur d'Alene is to Spokane, and just the labor there. You don't have the subdivisions coming up like you do in Post Falls because there's simply no labor there, and it's like why travel to Sandpoint when you can build in Coeur d'Alene? So.
It's true. All right. Well, we're getting up close to the hour mark here. Nick, did you want to add anything before we kind of wind down with the final questions?
No, I'm ready for those sweet final questions. Thank you.
The sweet, sweet final questions. All right, Anthony, we told you about these questions before we started, but it's just something we ask all of our guests right when we're kind of winding down to see where your head's at with a lot of stuff. First question is, if there's a business or investing book that you recommend every single real estate investor read, what would it be?
Great question. I'm going to skip past the ones that everyone should read, Rich Dad Poor Dad and Think and Grow Rich, and go right to a book that most people haven't read called 4,000 Weeks. It's kind of prefaces it with every single person has roughly, the average person has 4,000 weeks in their life. The first 1,000 are eaten away by before you're 18. The last 1,000 are pretty much you don't have a lot of energy and you're retired. So you really have 2,000 weeks to live your life. And it really puts into perspective how short your life is and to take action just every day and say no to a lot of things. So I'd recommend everyone read 4,000 Weeks. I think it's like 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals.
Awesome. Do you know who it's written by?
Right there. There it is.
There it is. Who's it written by?
Yeah, it's written by Oliver Berkman. Great book, though. I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
And everyone should read, Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad. But
Of course. That's an interesting take. I've never heard the 4,000 weeks. I'm going to put that one on my list for sure. The next question I have for you, Anthony, is if you had $30 million gifted to your bank account, what is the first thing you would spend it on?
apartment building, of course. I mean, I'm just so much like, why would I?
Throw it back in the fund.
Is it taxable? Because I'd put it into real estate even more, get bonus depreciation, pay no taxes on it, and then I'd have cash flow, never have to work a day again in my life, and I can live wherever I want. I mean, goodness.
It's always interesting to hear what people would spend it on because, I mean, that's a lot of money. You can buy your dream car, you can buy your dream home, or you can make that money make you more money. It's just interesting to hear your take on it for sure. So
I mean, at $30 million at a 7% return, I'd make 2.1 million a year in cash flow, tax free. I could buy whatever car, whatever house I wanted to. So, and then that money would be worth 100 million in 20 years. So,
I love it. It's good stuff, man. What advice would you give to a newer investor looking to get started on their first or second deal?
great question. I would say first deal, just get started. Like find something that makes sense. If you have the money, just get going. You're not going to make a ton of money on your first deal, but just the action of getting started is the hardest thing you can do in any entrepreneur venture, pretty much anything in your life. Even if it's going to the gym, just get started. It all snowballs from there. Number two is don't be afraid to go bigger quicker because a lot of people are scared to take the next step. And then they realized in 10 years they should have gone bigger quicker. So it's exactly what I did. I listened to a lot of people and said, go big. And I said, I'm just going to go big. And it's the best thing that I've done.
You absolutely did. You were killing it, man. It's been awesome talking for sure. Just a couple more questions for you. The next one is, how would you define success?
Freedom. Freedom to do whatever you want on your terms with the people that you want to do it. That's the pure definition in my mind in freedom. In success.
I love it. Sure. And then the next question is, when you're not investing in real estate, what's something you like to do with your free time?
Great question. Pretty much outdoors. So I do a lot of skiing in the winter, and then I do a lot of boating in the summer. And then other than that, a lot of real estate and then hanging out with friends and family. Those are pretty much my big four.
I love it. Good stuff.
Speaking like a true North Idahoan. Good job.
That's right.
Skiing and boating. What else is there to do? Get outside and enjoy the outdoors.
Right.
If you don't love the outdoors, don't live in Idaho.
Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Well, Anthony, this has been super great, by the way. Thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any final closing thoughts for us or anything you want to add before we kind of end this podcast?
I don't think so. I just really appreciate what you guys are doing. I think this is going to be a great podcast, and I'm really excited to see you guys grow in your guys' investing endeavors and this growth of this Investor Shed podcast. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's meet up for coffee, too, by the way. We should meet up sometime. We'll talk a little bit about this, so that'd be good.
Love to. Just let me know when.
Let's make it happen. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. Tune in next time. See you later. Bye.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.